I think it goes without saying that I absolutely adore plants, and today I'm going to be making some new ones or propagating some plants, and I thought I'd bring you along and show you how I do. So propagating plants is just the process of creating these new baby plants out of some existing mature mama plants, and it's just a really easy, affordable way to fill up your house full of plants just based on what you've already got. You don't necessarily need to go and buy anything. One of the other reasons I do it is it's just such a rewarding feeling to see that you're kind of creating this new life, you know? So I'm going to show you how I propagate 5 of my favorites. One of them is pothos, which is the one you see here and hanging behind me in the kitchen. The other one is the Monstera deliciosa, with its big, beautiful leaves. I'll also show you how to propagate the pancake plant, or the pillias, and a couple of others as well. I do want to take a brief moment before we begin to thank Audible for partnering with us on today's video, but we're going to chat more about them at the end. For now, we're going to get started on propagating some plants. The pothos is probably my favorite plant. I think it looks so beautiful, the way it waterfalls out of a pot if it's hanging on the ceiling, or the way it cascades down the side of a surface. So I've got this pothos here, and it's beautiful, but it's getting really long and it's hitting the ground, so it needs a trim. And the lovely thing is we can use the trimmings to create a new baby plant. So all I'm gonna do is I'm going to cut the vine just at a point below where a leaf is coming out of the vine. So I'm just gonna snip it like that, and you don't need to worry about the fact that you've just made this incision. A new little vine or piece is going to stick out from here and grow, and it's going to hit the ground again within a few months. So we're going to hang on to these trimmings, and I'm just going to continue this all the way around the plant. The first thing we need to do is find the nodes on this vine. I'm going to show you how to do that. It's really easy. It's pretty much just any point where a leaf is coming out from the vine. So this here is a node, this is a node, this. I think you get the idea. So what we're gonna wanna do is take some sharp scissors, a knife, and we're just gonna make a cut about 1 centimeter on either side of a node, like so. And we're gonna repeat this all the way up the vine. So 1 centimeter on each side. And any little bit of vine that we cut that was just these pieces here, we actually don't need these, so we're just gonna put these to the side. And this here, these cuttings, are what we're gonna put in water. And if I actually get you to take a look at these nodes, at one node in particular, let's look at that one, you can see these little protrusions that are coming off of it. That's actually very likely where the roots are going to pop out from once we put this in water. So now that we've got all these trimmings, all we need to do is dunk it into some water. You want to make sure that those nodes stay submerged, because like we said, that's where the roots are coming out from. And then comes arguably the hardest part, which is to patiently wait for these to root, which can take anywhere between 2 to 4 weeks. Now, one really important thing in that time is you want to make sure that you're topping up your little vessel, your cup, whatever you're using, with water, because you're going to notice those water levels are starting to drop as the plant is using it up and as it evaporates. And maybe even more important than that is about once a week, you actually want to completely dump out the water that's in here and fill it up with some fresh water. The reason for that is tap water has some oxygen in it, and roots of plants need oxygen in order to grow. They're living things just like us. And then in terms of where to store it, you just want to put it somewhere that has a good amount of sunlight and somewhere that's preferably a little bit warmer. So maybe keep it away from windowsills, because that's a lot of fluctuating temperature. Potting the pothos is actually really straightforward. Once it roots about 2 centimeters or an inch, you're good to go. I'm just gonna actually show you this one here. I put this in water probably at least 3 or 4 months ago, and the cool thing about that is it shows you that pothos can actually live in water. So if you don't have time to put it in soil, or even if you wanna just keep it like this because it looks decorative, you definitely can, so long as, again, you're replacing the water to keep it fresh. But you can see these roots have actually gotten longer than they need to be. You only need a couple centimeters or so. So what I've got here is some soil, and I like to moisten it first by adding some water to it before we transplant our cuttings into the soil. Because you got to keep in mind that the pothos just came from being in a water environment for quite a while, and so they're going to want the soil to be moist, not wet, but just moist enough that it kind of sticks together. So once you've added some water, just get in there with your hands, give it a mix, and once you kind of get it to that point where it sticks together a bit, it's good, it's ready to use. And then the only other thing that you're going to need is an inner pot that has holes on the bottom. That is incredibly important that it has holes, because when you're going to water your plant later, you want it to be able to drain the water out so that the roots don't rot. So all I'm going to do now is I'm going to transfer some of that moist soil into this inner pot. And now I'm going to take this plant that has a lot of roots, I'm actually gonna cut it because I don't think it needs all that much roots and it makes it easier to plant. I'm just gonna cut it to make the roots about 1 inch long, and then we're gonna put that into the soil. So I'm using a 4-inch or 10 centimeter pot here, and I'm gonna plant about somewhere around 10, maybe 15 of these cuttings into the soil. Not all of the cuttings are gonna take. Some of them might die, there might be some casualties. That's okay. It's still gonna grow into becoming a beautiful, luscious, healthy plant. And then we're gonna pour a little bit of water on the soil as well. And for the first couple of weeks, we wanna try to keep that soil moist to promote the roots to continue to grow and just get used to their new environment. And that's pretty much it. You've made yourself a little baby pothos plant, and within a few months, hopefully, and I'm sure you're gonna have a lot of success with it, it's gonna go great. You're gonna end up with a plant that's gonna grow its own vines and become its own mom at some point that you can trim because it's becoming so long. And that's it. That's how you make your own pothos at home. Now that we've propagated the pothos, this part is gonna be a breeze because you understand a lot of the key principles. So we are now gonna be propagating the string of hearts, which is such a beautiful, delicate plant. So in much the same way as we did before, we are going to take one of the vines from the mother plant, and we are going to give it a snip on the vine, somewhere around the halfway point. So now what we could do is we could just put this straight into the water. The node, again, is where the roots are gonna come from. But if we put this in the water, the node in the water with the leaf, with that leaf being submerged, it's actually gonna rot. So one of the major or main differences here is we actually wanna take that leaf at the node and just pluck it off. And so then we're creating a little naked node, and that's what we're going to dunk into the water. And what I usually like to do is keep about 2 nodes worth here attached, and then I give the vine another snip, and then we are going to find another node. Before we submerge it in the water, we're going to pluck off these leaves to create a little naked node, and we're gonna put that in the water as well. Again comes the part of being patient, so wait about 3 to 4 weeks for this to root. But if I can be honest, what I actually like to do sometimes is to just keep it in the decorative glass jar, vase, or whatever you've got, because I think it looks really pretty when you put it on a shelf like this. Just even in solitude, it looks really nice. But if it does start to root and you're ready to put it into a pot, if you take a look at this one, for example, I've had this sitting in water for, I think, a couple of months now at least. And once it starts to show you roots like this, you can put it into a pot. Make sure, again, it has some drainage holes. Make sure that for the first week or 2, you're keeping the soil moist, just like we did before. It came from a water medium. It needs to acclimate to being in soil again. But after the 1 or 2 weeks are up, really taper back on how much you're watering this, because it is a succulent after all, actually. So you don't want to overlove it because you could risk losing it in the process. The next plant that we're going to be propagating is the Monstera deliciosa, which I think is just so beautiful. And maybe it's because it's rising in popularity, but I also find this to be a particularly expensive plant. But if you've already got one of these at home, you can make more from it, and I'm going to show you how. The main thing about the Monstera is that you really need to know where to cut, and the node on this particular plant is where you see 2 stems coming out of a single junction. The other way you know that that's the node is that very often there's a root already coming out from it, and on the Monstera this is called the aerial root. So you'll notice that this is a node, but this here is also a node because you can see 2 stems coming out from that as well, and this one has quite a large aerial root. So what you usually want to do is make a cut about 1 or 2 centimeters below the node. So you can choose to do that either here or here. And in our case, I'm going to choose this one, so about 1 or 2 centimeters below. Make sure you've got really sharp scissors. There we go. So this large piece is what I've just cut off. So we've got 3 stems and 3 leaves. Now there's 2 options with this in terms of how you can propagate. One of them, and probably the one I actually use more often, is to put it straight into a big vase of water and then wait till it gives you some roots and then transplant it into soil. But because we've already done that twice, I'm going to show you another way that you can propagate this, which is to propagate by putting it straight into soil, which is an awesome option if you feel impatient and don't want to wait for it to root. Given that this already has some aerial roots, you can just put these straight into the soil. Now these aerial roots are actually a little bit longer than I want them to be, so I'm going to go ahead and give these a little bit of a trim, and it's not a big deal because they're going to grow back again once they're in the soil. So I'm going to cut it right here. I'm gonna cut a little bit right there. So now we're just gonna take a pot. Again, always make sure that the pot has drainage holes. That's really important. And we're gonna add to it some pre-moistened soil. And now what I'm gonna do is I'm actually just gonna create a large well in the center of the soil so that we can put our cutting into the soil. I'm gonna put the first node in and just tuck in that aerial root. And you see this little aerial root right here? Eventually that's gonna turn downwards and it's gonna grow into the soil, securing it even more. That'll happen naturally, you don't have to do anything for that. That's pretty much it. This is really easy. I'm just gonna put it into a nice decorative outer pot. And monsteras do like a lot of water, so you can make sure to add a little bit of water on top. And that's pretty much it. That's how you propagate, or one of the ways that you can propagate a Monstera deliciosa. So the palea or the pancake plant is the one that we have easily propagated the most. I think we started with 2 of them, and in the last year we've made 20 from those 2. So needless to say, it's pretty straightforward, pretty easy to do. It's gonna be a little bit different than all of the propagations we've done before in that you don't need to look for any nodes. Instead, what happens is you've got your mature mama plant here, which used to be a baby actually, but what it's gonna start to do is it's gonna pop off these little babies. You're gonna see them kind of just coming up in the soil all around the mama plant. And then what we're gonna wanna do is very gently, we're going to pry off one of the babies. Try to keep a little bit, you don't need a lot, but try to keep a little bit of the roots intact there. If it's not messy, you're not doing it right. All right, and then you're just gonna transplant this into some moist soil. Now, if it happened that you accidentally cut this off and you didn't get any roots in it at all, not to worry, you can just plop, 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 plunk, plop, plunk. You can just plunk this into some water, and these love water. They can live in water just like the plants we've seen that have come before it. So let me show you an example here. So this here is a palea that I just have hanging off of something, and I think it looks really beautiful, but it's actually not in soil, it's submerged in water. And look at that beautiful root system that it creates. So you can keep it in water so long as, again, you're keeping it topped up and fresh. But if you do manage to, and I think this is just the easier way to do it, if you do get one of these babies with roots intact, you can just transplant it straight into some soil, and then you're just gonna create a little well and put that baby in there, push it down, close it up, and that's pretty much it. So this baby, believe it or not, about a year ago, that's what this mom looked like that. And so it'll grow and hopefully give you some more babies. And just with like human babies, they need a lot of attention in the beginning. So keep the soil moist for the first couple weeks and then you can taper it back. And I just feel like pancake plants especially make for the best gifts. We've given a whole bunch of these away, and it's always really fun when you go to somebody's house or office and they're like, look at how my pancake plant is doing. And it's really nice to see that you've gotten them excited about plants too. So that's how you propagate, the most easy way to propagate pancake plants. So the last plant that we're going to propagate is the ZZ plant, which is this beautiful, lush plant that's got these really thick, gorgeous green leaves. It's a really good plant for anyone who's a beginner because it can kind of tolerate low light situations, or if you neglect it, not that I'd recommend neglecting it, but if you miss a watering or even 2 or maybe 3, it'll do just fine usually. So when it comes to propagating this plant, there's a few different ways. I'm going to tell you about one, I'm going to show you one. One method is that you can actually just cut it off, cut one of the stems from the bottom, and when you do that, then you can just plunk it in some water and it'll grow some roots, and then you can put it in some soil. We've already done that before, so I'm not going to show you how to do that right now. But the second way that you can propagate this plant is through a process called division. I feel like I need your help. Thank you. Perfect. So the plant grows from these thick bulbs just underneath the soil called rhizomes, and these rhizomes actually hold some water, which is why the plant can tolerate a little bit of neglect if you miss watering it. So all we have to do in this case is you gently want to play a little bit of a tug of war. There we go, I think I've got one here. So if possible, that's what you want to do. You want to make sure that you get some of the roots, 1 or 2 of the rhizomes at least, some stems and some leaves, and that's it. So as usual, we're grabbing an inner pot. I'm going to add to it some pre-moistened soil. There we go. So I'm going to plant this in there like so. And one more. Add some new fresh soil on top. just to bury those rhizomes. Again, they want to be under the soil. So now that it's all planted, I'm just gonna put it in this outer pot just for decoration, really. I'm gonna give it a little bit more water, and then after this, you're just gonna wanna put it somewhere where it has some indirect light, and make sure you're evenly watering it over the next week or two while it's recovering. And then eventually you're gonna notice it's gonna shoot out these kind of little baby stems and these new leaves, which you can tell because they're really light green color. And that's how you create a little army of these. So these are them. These are the 5 plants that we've propagated together today. Hopefully it's a fun little activity, something that you can do from home. And this is also the perfect time of year to get started. Here it's spring and the days are getting longer and the days are warmer. And so you can see the roots start to grow faster, your plants growing quicker, you see the fruits of your labor sooner. And I think it also just gives your plants a better chance for success when you're propagating them this time of year. And again, a very warm thank you to Audible for partnering with us on today's video. I've, like all of you guys, been spending more of my time indoors lately, so I've noticed that I've been listening to a lot more audiobooks because I feel like it's such a nice way to stay stimulated and learn something new. I just started to re-listen to an audiobook that is incredible. It's really short and sweet. It's written by Pema Chodron and it's called Getting Unstuck. She's just such an amazing teacher. So in the book, she talks about this idea, this concept of something called Shenpa. And Shenpa is just this stickiness that thoughts and feelings can have. You know, sometimes you're in your head so much and you're not really in the present and in the now. That's Shenpa. And so she talks about, you know, why it is that we have Shenpa and what we can do, how we can approach it, and how to bring ourselves back into the now and into the present moment. And she's got this incredible personality, a really awesome sense of humor, a very, very soothing voice. So I definitely recommend it. If you think you might be interested in giving it a try, you can visit audible.com/pickuplimes or see the link in the description box below to get a 30-day free trial plus 1 audiobook of your choosing and 2 Audible originals absolutely for free. And I think that's it for today. If you did enjoy the video, it always means a lot when you give it a thumbs up. And if you have any propagation tips of your own or any plants that you propagate, I'd actually be curious about that too. So I'll see you guys in the comments. Thanks a lot for watching. Pickup Limes signing off, and we'll see you in the next video. Look at how many babies are in this one. That is loaded. Like, let's see how many this one can give us actually. 4, 5, 6, 7. 7 babies off of that one mum.